Henning Kraggerud, it's a huge pleasure to chat with you today at your new adopted home of the ICO in Limerick. Thanks for joining me.
Well, thanks. It's fantastic. I feel so honored to become an artistic partner of ICO, and thanks for having this talk with me.
Oh, delighted. Henning, let's jump in. In your approach to music and music making, we get the impression of a sense of spontaneity where you and your fellow musicians are in an environment where you can express yourselves freely. So would you agree with this? And could you tell us more about how you create your space and process for music?
Yes, well, I do agree, and I think music as a language, mainly speaking through the feelings, could be explored in many, many different ways. I think I grew up with too large percent of that being just by the analyzation of the score. And I've looked more and more into being free and thinking music in its manifested state also incorporate movement, in a way dance. And it's also a way to sing with your soul. So during rehearsal with this wonderful orchestra here, who are open to rehearse in very different ways, we are indeed actually singing what we're going to play. We are actually dancing parts of the movements we are playing to kindle this kind of enthusiasm within, so the music doesn't become just something from the notation through the intellectual, but something for the whole body. And this has been my goal. I want to live fully as a human, and I want to share that with my fellow musicians. So they need to feel they're expressing their own voice. So in recreating this is why I like to use all other connected things in the process. And it's so nice to see the faces of the musicians when they look up from the score, start to sing what they are about to play, and then that transforms something, because I believe we have wiser parts within ourselves which likes to be free, not overly governed by intellectual thoughts, but in a way become another version of the persons we were when we were kindergarten age, more wise, but still have that playfulness.
Kind of releasing music from the page and living experience. Wow. Indeed, getting back to childhood, which you mentioned there, through your early years, you had well, perhaps unconventional or non-standard approach to music and performance learning. In interviews, you've spoken of the role of improvisation, of composition, and of cultivating broader artistic interests in your own work with your first teachers. So could you describe your own background a little and how it shaped your creative process?
Yes, I was very, very lucky, because my very first teacher, Magna Halvorsen, she was a pensioner. She had all the time in the world, and she just teach for fun of it. So every week, Fridays at I think 4:30, I would come to her, and I would first play what I had in my lesson. But then after I'd done that and we worked a little bit on that, I would sit down with her and she would serve me some tea and maybe some cakes. She would ask me, how was your day at school? And we were talking about it. And after that we would play some more, but that was off schedule. And pretty soon I could bring my own compositions and play for her, or we would do some chamber music together. So quite often I was there for 2 hours or more every week, and I really looked forward to that. And that was such a great introduction to classical music. And then after she had taught me for about 3 years, she called one of Norway's best teachers, Leif Jørgensen, and set up an audition for me. And that was, of course, fantastic for me, because he was also a holistic thinker in a way. So he would, in his lessons to me, he would say, well, playing this work, I can recommend you to read this novel from the same time. And he would see, you know, the music in a broader context. And he would also be into things which then wasn't popular in Norway, yoga-like things to center yourself. He would stimulate me, because he knew I liked to compose. I'd even auditioned with one of my compositions. He would say, you don't need to play these etudes, you can compose something to facilitate learning these thirds or these techniques. So he would stimulate that side as well. So first of all, I was incredibly lucky with who introduced me to classical music. And I remember, though, because this Leif Jørgensen died very sudden, when I was about 13 or 14 years old, but on one of the last lessons he had, he said to me, you should know that this is a vocation. You have like now a sort of duty to pass this on. And this I always thought about, that it's not about only the playing, but it is what we pass on. And this brings me to one of my favorite quotes, free after Gustav Mahler. He says that our duty on earth is to pass on the flame, not to store any ashes. And for me, ashes could be anything, but notation, even at some points, even tradition. At some points, when is it alive, when is it not alive? But the flame, what I think Mahler meant with the flame, this is something maybe Robert Schumann expresses even better. He says that nothing great has ever been achieved without enthusiasm. And I think you need the enthusiasm. So when learning a piece with orchestra or by myself, I always actually look for things to love. And if there is things in the harmony, melody, rhythm, everywhere in the score, there isn't any place where there isn't anything I love. I am interested in that, I love this section. By nature then, I have a good story to tell. So I think we have put too much emphasis on the superficial things like playing together or playing in tune or something like that, but that doesn't say anything about meaning at all. Do we have a story we love to tell to the audience? So going on stage, if we love the music, then the storytelling can be free.
What I'm hearing is such a sense of ownership of the music on a very human level. I know that you were composing yourself from an early age, whereas perhaps the standard perception of classical music is that composing is an elite level that you come to after several degrees. But for yourself, it seems to be very much the human response, an entitlement of every human being to partake in the music and to leap into it. Would you say that's a fair?
Yes, absolutely. I think to express yourself musically, it's a language. And I have this project now where I actually even improvise together with people who have never ever played the instrument. And it's very interesting. I will do this live in concert sometime. I will ask anybody who have not play the instrument to raise their hands, and I've prepared sometimes some cheaper instruments for them, and I ask, are any of you willing to come down on stage and play with me? And so far I've never had a concert where no one was willing. And then you can learn them like to do pizzicato maybe on the cello, you can play, and I say change when you want to do it, and I start to improvise with them, and we can have fun straight away. So there is this myth that music needs to be difficult, or that it's difficult to become a composer. So the first thing I do when I get a new student at the academy in Oslo is to improvise, to start to improvise. And quite often my students would say, oh, I'm not very good at improvisation. And then I ask, well, how much have you done it? And maybe they have attempted 3, 4, 5 times. And say, well, maybe you are actually then really, really good, you cannot know. And if you improvise only 5 minutes a day for, say, 2 weeks, and then you look and hear through your improvisation, and then you decide, okay, I can write down, then you're a composer. It's ridiculously easy to become a composer, but we have this myth, because we're always comparing ourselves with Bach or Beethoven or something, that it's impossible. But I think music as a language, we should use it in all ways. So improvisation can be like thinking, can be like talking. And some people will say, but I never improvise. And then I ask them, do you bring a script to a cafe when you go meet your best friend? And of course, people are improvising all the time, just not with the instruments.
Exactly. Oh, gosh, from what you're saying, I can't wait for ICO concerts in the future. There's going to be a lot of fun had. Well, your concerts indeed, they're highly celebrated for their level of engagement and accessibility. What do you believe is key to fostering a connection with the audience, particularly in this changing world where we're so used to fast food media, so to speak, where people's attention spans are shorter? What would you say are the key factors for an orchestra or an ensemble to reach out to an audience today, in your own experience?
It's of course several possibilities here, but I think to engage the audience in something they know already is a key. So I always like to talk in the concerts, or indeed bring in an author or somebody else to talk. And say in the case of this week's concert with Vivaldi, I think because he published these works with wonderful sonnets about the different times of year, I just tell a little bit about that to plant this in the mind of the audience right before they hear, so they can start to listen to the music and have various angles to get into it. And in this case, everything starts with the joy of spring, and we can feel that in Ireland now, fantastic weather. And this is also how I worked with the orchestra yesterday, to really feel this joy is how to get into a character we can believe in. And this, of course, through singing and dancing, we can break down any intellectual barriers which might hinder us. So, but in concerts, I also like to be a little bit interactive with audience. So last time when I was here with Bach Goldberg, I got the people to the audience to engage with the music. So it's many different ways. But I think increasingly now I feel also that people like to have this space of freedom from the screens. So we are surrounded by computers and cell phones and everything, but you are in a concert, you are there for maybe 1.5 hours without that. So I think there is this growing wish for getting deeper. I don't think people are really satisfied with scrolling, always getting new things passing by, but getting into one thing. So this week, of course, Vivaldi's Four Seasons, which was published exactly 300 years ago, is a piece which can be revived and live in new ways. And my angle was when I learned that Vivaldi was written during the end of the Little Ice Age, they call it. So Europe was much colder. The channels of Venice were freezing at Vivaldi's time. So the climate was indeed comparable to what Norway is today. And I thought, well, I want to bring that aspects. I want to bring the coldness I know from my childhood really into this music. Think that Italy at that time had quite strong natures. People could freeze to death in Italy, and the summers were still very warm, but I think to be in relation with this not only the composer Vivaldi, but also the thinker Vivaldi, sort of his philosophy in a way.
Absolutely, yeah. And this living legacy of bringing such a sensibility of the circumstances of the time to a music of today and relating it to the audience. Well, in your work as director of the Arctic Chamber Orchestra and in other projects, you've explored a range of themes and performance concepts. For example, your fabulous collaboration with the author Jostein Gaarder in the conception of your Equinox concertos, which we play so often on Lyric. They're wonderful works. And they take us through time, space, tonality, and then your Edvard Munch project, where you performed a series of commissioned pieces in front of various paintings by Munch in a gallery. So can you share some thoughts or enlarge on this idea of contextuality, of bringing in different media and how it works in your approach to art as well as to music, in your approach to the arts in general and your own composing?
Yes, well, it's a big question, but I will start with that. Quite often it starts with a discussion about what do we want to achieve, and to not always get into the same patterns. I like to challenge myself and the program committees and everyone around the possible program. So one example would be, there was a Norwegian author, Erika Fatland, who published a book called The Border, which is about every country bordering Russia. this was published before the Ukrainian war, and we decided, okay, let's do a project about that, because Norway is the only country which has not been attacked by Russia. All the other countries has been attacked. We are the sole country which hasn't been that. And then we started, then we need to start to find music from these border countries. And that, of course, brought us into looking into music from countries we had barely heard about. And this challenge leads to discovering of new repertoire, and also in the case when we use a repertoire we already know, to give it a different context. So I think this type of being challenged, for instance, by literature, is something I want to bring also to the ICO. We had used lots of Norwegian authors in Tromsø, and I would love to get into Irish authors and their perspectives of the world, and already also think about the aspects of all the Irish persons who left Ireland. So anyway, great classics from the past and also things written today. I would love to dive more and more into this, the Irish perspective of this.
Wow, well, we can't wait. And I'd love to get back to that, but I'm going to take the risk of going onto a sidebar now, because a few years ago I read an interview with you, and something which made me laugh, in that the interviewer asked, why didn't you write contemporary music? And in that I think they were referring to abstract music, which has no connection with anything else. And your response, I think, was very funny. Can you remember what you said?
Yeah, I think I do remember. And this person interviewing me was had a sort of particular look and sort of high color, and he was like challenging me and why don't you write contemporary music? And I think I answered something along the lines that I'm alive now. What is the definition of contemporary?
Yes.
And I couldn't get a good answer back there. So I think luckily this was my first published thing on any CD in the early 90s, I believe. So the world has become less dogmatic and more free now. I think you don't meet this attitude as often anymore. And I think the world is open for rethinking what is contemporary. And I would like to say that I am very, very, very happy that contemporary music can mean a lot of different things. And like working with the Munch suite you mentioned earlier, where I commissioned 15 new pieces by 15 different composers around the world. The genius thing about this project is these pieces, which maybe people would have think, oh, I don't like this type of music, but then you sit in front of a painting by Munch and you know that the piece is composed to that painting, and then you listen to it and look, and then suddenly you find, oh, there is more in the world I could appreciate and love. There is other ways to so the palette now is wider than ever. We have the possibility. So even though I do a lot of romantic music when I perform in concert hall, of course I know if you make a horror movie, Brahms is not the best to score a horror movie. We need a palette with widely different colors, and everything which is human can be expressed through art. And I love now that we are doing less censorship in what is allowed. So when people try to say the novel is dead, some people say, but of course it's surviving. It's the same with some composers said tonality is dead. Of course it's not. It has always been living, but it's possible now also to write in a variety of other styles, which brings in new possibilities of creating stories. So
opens up so many new worlds.
Yes.
Absolutely. So getting back to the exciting times ahead of us and your partnership with the ICO, do you feel a particular connection to Ireland? You touched on that there, but Do you find any particular cultural similarities between Ireland and Norway?
There are many, and I'm still in the phase of discovery. And when I got when we started the sort of talk about me becoming a possible new artistic partner, I then talked with my uncle, who is into looking into family trees and things in our family. And I said, the family I know I have from Manchester, where did those people come from? And then we found that there was Sarah Strahan from Ireland, born in 1860, and so I'm actually 1/32 Irish. And that I didn't know the last time I was here, but I'm very proud. So I'm a little bit Irish. And when I play with the orchestra here, I feel much more than a 32nd because they are so warm and welcoming. So, the different connections, of course, both of us are at the sort of western frontier of Europe. We face the ocean, and we are not that far away from each other physically either. And we have the winds from the Atlantic Ocean coming in over us. And of course, from the old days, indeed, Vikings were founding parts of Dublin, I believe, and so there have been connections. Not that the Norwegians always behaved very well in that.
Oh, the Vikings were at Limerick too.
Yes.
Yep, you're on home turf.
Yes, exactly. So good. And so there is many aspects of this, and at the moment I think I'm just sort of started to scratch the surface, and from what I've learned so far, it's like, oh, I want to dive into this. But now with the orchestra members, let's say after the rehearsal yesterday, we ended up in the restaurant at 9:15 in the evening, ordering a meal together, talking, and they are so warm and so including, and that was the case already from the very beginning. The first tour I did back in 2022, I remember I come home to my wife and told about this wonderful orchestra who not only plays and performs fantastic, but also are such warm people. So there is the warmness, the generosity of the Irish culture, I think I appreciate the very most. I think this goes straight to my heart, and I think in Norway, which is even colder, we can sometimes choose to close ourselves a little bit, but we also have the wish for this warmness. I think it will be good for me to be often in Ireland.
Oh, that's a beautiful parallel. And indeed, the Irish Chamber Orchestra are an amazing bunch of people.
They are.
But, just delighted now you're an official Irishman. We can press on with that. Well, of course, getting to the ICO, it's known for its unique sound, its vibrant programming, its bold collaborations, everything from theatre to dance to opera, even DJs. And looking ahead, how do you envision the future of programming with the Irish Chamber Orchestra? What directions or projects do you possibly see on the horizon?
Yes, we have already started to talk about this aspect to getting touch with literature. So this we have planned it, and we are looking for suitable projects where contemporary Irish literature could inspire us to programming. And I have sent in about 25 different programs to the orchestra as a starting point for discussion. And in addition, we have this wish both from Irish Chamber Orchestra and from Arctic Philharmonic Chamber Orchestra to do possible future collaborations between the orchestras, which has like wish and from both sides. So we are also looking into maybe co-commissioning works and looking for other ways, maybe get Irish Chamber Orchestra to come and tour in Norway, or Arctic Philharmonic to play in some of the concert venues here in Ireland. But then, of course, we concretely look for program ideas which can be captivating the time we are living in. And of course, at the time of us talking now, tariffs and other things are all on the news everywhere. But I think we don't know. It could come an economic recession. It could be actually going well after a while. But I think art has a fantastic possibility, and I was just talking now about it, that even if we have recession, what could possibly increase the life quality of the Irish people? Well, art can do that even in times of recession. So to make a democratic sort of process of art, think of us as sort of missionaries for art in the orchestra, and also develop and kindle more of the expressing of art for the general population. So this is why in Norway I'm already part of a program called Spark for young musicians between 6 and 12-year-old, where we do improvisation, stimulate the composition, and then for a talent program from 13 to 18, and then teaching at the Academy of Music from 18 to 25. And in this teaching I talk with the students about my visions for transforming how we look at music at all, and all the arts forms. So I do believe most children, when they are in kindergarten age, they enjoy drawing, they like to be creative, express themselves through art. And sadly, during the normal education system, this is not stimulated enough. And here I think we share views with the Irish Chamber Orchestra and me, that we can continue this in new ways. And the goal is to get a society where as large percent as possible can express themselves. And if there is a recession, that can increase life quality, but even, let's say, it goes very well and economic situation in the world solves itself, and still I think more and more work will be made by machines and other things. So even if we get to a time in the future where we work less and have more freedom, what should then the free time be filled with? If we can fill it with art, I think we will have a better society. If we are not expressing ourselves through art, I fear that increased free time could also turn to not a blessing, but how should I express it? I think to have a purpose, to have a higher goal, something to achieve, we shouldn't think of this as something for the professional artist only, but for as much part of the population as possible.
So much in everything that you were saying, your approach to your work, composition, concert programming, performance. It seems to be so much about breaking down self-imposed barriers in music and in the arts. And it really seems to reach onto a societal level, from what you're saying about the power of music and the arts to change our whole way of life and to open up new possibilities. Is that something that you feel is a vocation that you follow?
I do, because I try to think sort of really long term, what will make the world better, say for the next 50 years, next 100 years. And I really see that art is the part of the equation being overlooked by the politicians in a too much degree around the world. I don't think we will achieve a more fair world or a good situation for the environment long term without the arts contribution to this. Because we cannot tell people, oh, don't go on holiday, don't pollute, don't do this thing. We must rather give them something which gives them a better quality. People don't want to go down in life quality, but if we measure everything only by economics, we will miss that. If you are, say, playing music with friends and you love doing that, your life will be better by that. If you're in a local theater troupe performing plays, your life will be better of that. And naturally, we will focus away from measuring everything just in stock markets and money. And we will see that life quality is about something else. And then, of course, we can also work for a fairer world, not having to have cheap labor, another part of the world to sustain our way to live, because this imbalance is feeding all conflicts. And people can use the sort of people not being satisfied with how they live their life. That opens always the ways for persons who have other motivations to make the world indeed not better. But I think if we in the art world can be missionaries for this way of expressing something of value, I think we can gradually take away power from only thinking about money and power, and this increasing life quality is always possible.
That's an empowering message and an idea. I know that ICO believes that music is for everyone. It's brought music from concert halls to local communities, inspiring children to try music, supporting their journey from the first lesson to public performance, aspect which I know align with your ideas about music. So specifically, how do you see opportunities for collaboration or connectivity with ICO's schools and youth programs? What ideas would you have there?
Yes, already, like every time I've been here, I do this kind of masterclasses and other things. So now, during this week with concerts, I will also give 3 masterclass lessons to young Irish students. And then I have started a thing in Arctic Philharmonic, which I also want to continue here with ICO, that we select certain works where we can include these players in the concerts as well. So I think I'm always looking for suitable repertoire where we can expand the orchestra and bring in not only young music students, but also any amateurs in the area we are, so we can play music together with them. So this is, I mean, a luxury here because the programs is already existing. So it's more, how do we incorporate this into the actual programming for the forthcoming concerts? So this, during my years, I would like at least once a season to have this as part of the programs that we can have bring in. So what we have done in Tromsø is like using the local music schools, and then we find, okay, this repertoire, 5-minute piece or 10-minute piece, we can have a huge orchestra, and the barrier to get into it is not too difficult, so you can straight away work with, say, dance and song and freeing and having fun together. I think the more we do together, and I understand from the orchestra also that this is exactly what they want also.
What would you say makes the ICO such a unique band?
I think the orchestra has individuals to dare to be themselves at rehearsal. So sometimes you come to an orchestra which are governed a little bit by uncertainty or fear, and people are looking like that. Here it's not like that. You meet a lot of people who are themselves and can be very easily ignited and are willing to try different approaches. And also, this is interesting, when rehearsing with them, there will be sections where I haven't told anything to them, and they will take initiative themselves, which I love. So this is what I always like to stimulate it, that even if I'm in like an artistic partner and leading the rehearsals, the best scenario is always if the energy comes from each and one of the orchestra. And this is so easily achieved here. People take this responsibility upon themselves. And when I throw up in the air like a wildly different way to think about something, and I always like to tell them, this you can do if you like it. If you feel something different, try it. So with that in mind, I grew up with a lot of conductors and teachers who say, oh, do not rush here, there is no accelerando, do not do. But this is seen as from the score. But I like to see it from the writings of the composer, and you need to make this work speak through you yourself, and in that way you have to take a liberty. You cannot put the blame. Well, I just follow the recipe, this section I don't like. So Schumann says this really directly. He says, when you go on stage, you must love the things you're going to play. You should not go on stage unless you love the things you're about to play, but you should always look for more things to love. So to expand that, this is my goal, to widen that field and also know that responsibility. So the only thing not allowed in my rehearsals would be to be dissatisfied and do nothing about it. If you are dissatisfied with something and do something, that's fine. Anything. You have to do something, you believe in yourself. And that energy, even if it's not totally structured, always leads to spontaneous concerts.
Wonderful. Living art as opposed to an artifact.
Yes, that's a very good saying.
Well, I guess you'll be taking up your appointment as artistic partner in August of this year for 3 years. A very exciting time for the Irish Chamber Orchestra. We live in, as you were saying, an age of such flux, of such uncertainty. But within this temporal uncertainty, what would you envision that your tenure with the ICO will be like? What would you like to see that arc of experience being for you and for the band together?
Yes, now this is my third tour, and I already feel I know the orchestra quite well, but during the next 3 years, of course, it will be many, many more concerts, and I would like to learn more about Ireland and the culture here. I would also have a wish that the musicians themselves will feel that the persons they are can be acceptable, that they are daring to do whatever they like, even more, and they are already doing quite a lot. I don't know exactly in their hearts how they feel, but if they then feel that, okay, I can be myself. And this, I think, is a wonderful thing about art, which I want to express, is that for every type of personality, there is a possibility of art. So some of my heroes from the past could have been introverted persons or very extroverted, but there is so many ways to. So you are born with different possibilities, and those can be explored in various ways. We must look for things resonating within ourselves. So to be honest in the rehearsal process can lead to that. I don't want ever people to force themselves to do something which feels unnatural or dishonest, but to look for that. So I'm throwing out a lot of concepts and things like that, but at the same time I'm looking for where does it ignite a spark and what answers do I get, and hopefully this liberation process can not be only within the orchestra, but that we can incorporate more and more of the general population, more and more of the audiences, project with local choirs or music schools and other things, to spread this around. And this is the wonderful thing when I've worked with orchestras, and here it's a luxury, but when I travel around working with different orchestras, it's not like you need 50% of people to believe in something to make a shift. If those 5 or 10% who are sort of want to change the world to a better place, dare to stand up and share it, something starts to roll, and you can change the world to the better. It takes lesser percentage than you would think. Every great achievements of humanity have started with relatively few people doing something. So I'm optimistic that we can together all the good forces in every art, we can contribute to really make the world a better place. And Irish Chamber Orchestra feels like a fantastic place to be on that mission. Here people are extremely free. They are willing to do anything. Sometimes traveling places you can meet resistance. Not every orchestra in America or Germany or other countries have been sort of happy to stand up and sing what they're going to play. I've sometimes, felt a great resistance, like, why, this is not the way to do it. Here, the willingness to try out new ways is really thrilling. I called my wife yesterday and told about our first day of rehearsing for this program and said how incredibly fun it was, the response I got for pretty wild ideas.
Well, that's a harbinger of great things to come. Henning, it's been so generous and kind of you to chat with us today. To end, I was wondering if we could possibly get a word from your partner in crime there, your beautiful Guarnieri violin, which I believe dates from the 18th century.
Yes, it's built in 1744. It's the last year Guarnieri lived, and this is a masterpiece with its own unique history. It used to belong to Edith Laurent, a Hungarian Jewish violinist who had a small orchestra mainly playing in Germany until in the 1930s, and she narrowly escaped the Nazis and brought this violin to America, where it after a while ended up in sort of museum or foundation and wasn't played for a while. Then in 2006, I believe, Dextra Musica bought this instrument, and I was chosen as the sort of fortunate person who could revive it from its sleep and bring it back again to the concert stages, where of course violins thrive best and are most happy when they are played. And now I've had it for almost 20 years and I still find new secrets within it. It's a palette. Any thought I have, I can look for an answer here and not get exactly the thing I'm looking for, but something else. It is like it has a little will of its own. Maybe it's the stored emotions of all the violinists from the past who have put their feelings into it. I don't know, but there is something special about this. It's about 1 pound of weight, but you can still fill the whole concert hall without any microphones or anything. And so it's quite an achievement of humanity in Cremona in 1744 that we were able to build something which nobody has managed to surpass since, and it's living. I work also much with contemporary violin makers, and I love contemporary music instruments also, so I'm not against, I also use those. But to have that piece of history and know this was built when Johann Sebastian Bach was still alive, before Mozart was born.
Incredible. And we shall be hearing its strains around Ireland. And Henning Kraggerud, we're so excited at your artistic partnership with the Irish Chamber Orchestra. It's going to be a wonderful time in music and the arts in Ireland with you here. And thank you so much for chatting to us today. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, and I feel so much honored by it. I'm truly happy. This is it's a great day for me.